I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how I got played by my wife, but here we are. Her name's Lisa, and for years I thought we had a decent, if not perfect, marriage. We met in college, got married young, and settled into a routine that I naively believed was solid. We weren't the most passionate couple, but we loved each other, or so I thought. We had our ups and downs, as everyone does, but what really pushed me over the edge was the last few months, little things that didn't quite add up. Lisa started acting weird. She'd be unusually irritable, snapping at me over minor things. She'd stay out late more often, claiming it was work or girls' night out, but I could see through her bullshit. She'd come home with that defensive attitude like she was hiding something. I also noticed her phone was constantly in her hand, and she was secretive about it. She'd hide her texts, swipe away her notifications. I'd catch glimpses and see some weird numbers or names I didn't recognize. Of course, she'd blow it off, accuse me of paranoia, call me jealous, but I knew something was off. Then I started paying more attention to her routines. One night I was out of town on a business trip and I decided to check her social media. I figured I might find something just in case. Sure enough, I stumbled upon messages from some guy named Joe, who she claimed was just a friend she went to school with. But the texts weren't innocent. They were full of flirtations, suggestive comments, and plans to meet up. Plus, her location data showed her in areas she'd never mentioned going to, mostly deep into the woods, away from our usual spots. That's when I got the first real gut punch. I saw her Instagram story from a secluded trail, one I'd never even heard of. She was with someone, and from the looks of it, they were in the middle of some private identification lesson, as she called it. I knew exactly what that meant. She was cheating on me, and she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. That moment hit me like a freight train. I felt sick, furious, and incredibly betrayed. But I didn't confront her right away. I needed to see more. I set up some trail cameras myself, knowing she loved her nature photography. I rigged a few around the woods, especially near the spots she'd been visiting. I wanted proof, solid evidence of what she was really up to. Over the next few days, I checked the footage. And sure enough, there they were, Lisa and that guy Joe, meeting in remote spots in the woods, sometimes for hours. They'd be crouched over, whispering, pointing at plants, but I knew what they were really doing. She was lying about her identification lessons. It wasn't about plants. It was about sex, and she was doing it with him in the middle of the woods, pretending to be all innocent. I remember feeling shattered when I saw the footage. It was like my world collapsed. She'd always been bitchy, manipulative, quick to lie and twist stories, but I never thought she'd cheat on me with some stranger she met for lessons that were clearly just cover-ups for their affair. I'd never been unfaithful myself, so this betrayal hit me hard. I kept replaying those videos in my head, trying to process what I'd seen. I didn't sleep for nights. I kept asking myself, how long has this been going on? How could she lie to me like this? And the worst part was the feeling of helplessness, like I was completely blind to what was happening under my nose. The next step was inevitable. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I decided I had to confront her, but I wanted to do it on my terms with all the evidence laid out. I was furious, but I knew losing my temper wouldn't help. So I waited until she got home that evening. When she stepped through the door, she immediately sensed something was off. Her eyes darted around, and her typical bitchy attitude was even sharper. She snapped at me, trying to brush past, but I blocked her way. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms, and shot back. "What now? I've got plans." That was her way of dismissing me, of pretending she didn't know what I was about to say. I pulled out my phone, showed her the footage from my trail cameras. Her face froze. For a moment, she looked genuinely stunned then. Her expression twisted into anger. "That's a bunch of crap," she spat, trying to deny everything. "You're stalking me now, that's crazy." But I had her dead to rights. The videos didn't lie. I told her I'd been watching her for weeks, that I'd seen her sneaking around in the woods, meeting this guy Joe for hours at a time. Her face turned red, then pale. She kept insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that Joe was just a friend, that she was only helping him identify mushrooms and plants. I knew she was lying. Her voice was defensive, but I wasn't buying it anymore. She started screaming that I was crazy, that I was invading her privacy, that she had the right to do what she wanted. Her words were bitter, full of blame, accusing me of spying on her because I was insecure. I felt my blood boiling. How could she sit there and lie to my face, knowing I had caught her red-handed? I told her she was a liar, a cheat, and that I wasn't going to be made a fool of anymore. She stormed off into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. But I stayed there, staring at my phone, trying to process what I'd just seen. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak all at once. I'd always been the patient, understanding type, but her betrayal broke something inside me. I kept asking myself how she could lie so easily, how she could have spent months sneaking off with this guy in the woods, pretending it was about nature, when it was really about sex. The emotional toll hit me hard. I trusted her, loved her, and now I realized she'd been hiding this from me all along. I felt like I'd been slapped in the face. What hurt worse was knowing she'd lied about everything, the identification lessons, her supposed interest in nature, her girls' nights. All cover stories. It was a sick game, and I was the fool who'd believed it. I sat there in silence, trying to hold back tears, feeling betrayed and humiliated. How could she do this? How could I have missed all the signs? As I sat in the quiet, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to decide what to do next, whether to fight for the marriage or cut my losses, but one thing was clear: my trust was shattered. I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. This whole thing had turned my world upside down, and I felt like I was just beginning to understand the full extent of her deception. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and I definitely couldn't look at her the same way. The girl I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. She kept trying to deny everything, calling me paranoid and accusing me of ruining her reputation. She threw out every excuse in the book. "Joe's just a friend," she'd say. "It's just mushroom lessons, I swear." But I knew better. The evidence was there, plain as day. Still, she kept lying, and honestly, part of me questioned if I was just losing it, if I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I was. I spent the next couple of days trying to piece everything together. I kept replaying the footage, looking for any signs that I might have missed. I even started thinking maybe I should give her the benefit of the doubt, but that was just wishful thinking. The truth was that this was betrayal on a level I'd never experienced. The woman I married, my wife, was sleeping with some guy in the woods, pretending it was all about her nature hobby. I felt sick just thinking about it. How long had this been going on? How many times had she lied to me? Did she even love me anymore? Deciding to confront her again, I sat her down and laid everything out. No more hiding. I told her I had the footage, that I knew she'd been sneaking around for months. She looked at me with venom in her eyes, trying to turn it around on me, calling me crazy, saying I'd ruined everything. That was her typical reaction: blame shifting, deflecting, acting like the victim. She started crying, but not because she was sorry, because she was angry. She told me I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that she was innocent and just misunderstood. She even had the gall to accuse me of spying on her because I didn't trust her. That moment hit a new level of anger inside me. I realized she wasn't going to admit to anything, that she was just going to keep spinning her lies, and I was sick of it. I couldn't keep pretending I was okay with her betrayal. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies, and I knew I had to decide whether to fight for this marriage or finally admit it was over. I told her she needed to leave. She was no longer welcome in my home. She looked at me with utter disdain, telling me I was making a huge mistake, that she still loved me and didn't want to lose us. But I knew better. Love doesn't survive this kind of betrayal. I felt a strange mixture of sadness and anger, like I'd been punched in the gut. It was almost surreal, having to say goodbye to someone I'd loved, knowing she'd been two-timing me with that guy. I kept thinking about all the memories we'd shared, all the trust I'd given her, and how easily she'd thrown it all away. I was furious at her for lying, furious at myself for not seeing it sooner, and most of all, I was devastated. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about the end of a chapter I thought would never close. As she packed her things and left that night, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with emptiness. The house felt colder without her. I kept telling myself that I deserved better, that I shouldn't settle for someone who'd cheat and lie so blatantly. But a part of me was shattered, like I'd lost not only my wife but also my sense of trust in people. I wondered how long I'd be able to pick up the pieces, how I'd rebuild my life after all this. For now, I just sat there, staring at the empty space where she used to sleep, feeling the weight of betrayal settle in my chest. The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever experienced. After she left, the house was eerily quiet, and I found myself doing things I never thought I'd do, going through her things, looking for more clues, trying to understand how I missed all the signs. I was angry at myself for trusting her so blindly, but mostly I was angry at her for betraying everything we had. It's one thing to have an affair, it's another to lie about it, pretend everything's fine, and then blame you for being suspicious. I kept replaying that night in my head, trying to find some shred of guilt or remorse, but all I saw was her defiance, her lies, her bitchy smirk when I called her out. That's what cut the deepest, the way she acted like she was the victim, like I was in the wrong for catching her. I started to question if she ever loved me at all. Deep down, I knew she only loved herself and what she could get away with. She always had that sharp tongue, that attitude that made me feel like I was always walking on eggshells. Now I saw it was just her hiding who she really was. I also found her phone, hidden in a drawer. I wasn't planning on snooping, but I was too overwhelmed, so I looked. And what I saw made my stomach turn again. Texts from Joe, more explicit than anything I'd seen before. They were talking about meeting in the woods, about finishing what they started, and even more disturbing, she told him she loved the thrill of sneaking around in secret. I saw messages where she'd promised to meet him again even in the middle of the night. That's when I realized this was way worse than I thought. She wasn't just having some innocent identification lessons. She was actively pursuing this guy behind my back in secret while pretending she still cared about me. The emotional fallout was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and incredibly angry. She'd lied to me for months. I kept asking myself why she did it, what I'd done wrong. But honestly, I knew there was no excuse. She was selfish, manipulative, and willing to cheat just to get her kicks. I couldn't shake the feeling of worthlessness, like I'd failed somehow. I kept wondering if I'd ever be able to trust again, or if I was doomed to be suspicious of every woman I'd ever meet. I decided I had to focus on myself for a while. No contact, no trying to fix things. I moved my stuff into the guest room, packed up her things, and tried to keep my mind busy. Friends told me to file for divorce, but part of me still wanted to believe she'd come back and be honest. That hope was fleeting. Every time I saw her number pop up on my phone, I felt a surge of anger. I didn't want to see her again, didn't want to hear her excuses or her lies. I was done being manipulated, done being the fool. But the pain was real. Every day I'd wake up with that crushing sense of loss, knowing that I'd been played for a fool. I thought about all the times I'd been nice, patient, trusting, only to be betrayed like this. And the worst part was that I still loved her, even through all the anger and disappointment. That's what tore me apart. I kept asking myself how I could love someone who did this to me, who lied so effortlessly. It was a strange, painful mix of heartbreak and rage. I knew I had to let go, but it wasn't easy. Not by a long shot. The weeks dragged on, and I found myself sinking deeper into a kind of emotional numbness. I stayed mostly alone, trying to avoid the triggers that reminded me of her. Our photos, her clothes, even the woods where she met Joe. Everywhere I looked, there was a reminder of what I'd lost, and it hurt more than I thought possible. I kept replaying everything, the lies, the sneaking around, her bitchy attitude when I confronted her. Part of me kept hoping she'd come back, that maybe she'd realize she screwed up, but I knew deep down that was just wishful thinking. One day, I decided I had to do something. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, feeling like I was just waiting for the inevitable end. So I reached out to a lawyer, started the divorce process. I wanted to be done with the pain, with the betrayal. I wasn't interested in fighting over money or possessions. I just wanted to move on. But even as I did that, I couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I was finally taking control, but I also felt like I'd lost a part of myself that I'd never get back. During this period, I also started seeing a therapist. It was strange at first, sitting there, spilling out all my feelings, but it helped. I needed someone to talk to who wasn't biased, who could help me process everything. I learned that betrayal cuts deep, that healing takes time, and that I shouldn't blame myself for her choices. Still, I kept feeling that sting of heartbreak, that gnawing sense of someone I trusted turning out to be a stranger. One day, I found myself walking in the woods, near the spots where she used to meet Joe. I didn't plan it, but I just felt like I had to see it one last time. Looking around, I wondered how she could have lied to me so easily, how she could have in her mind justified betraying the vows we made. I realized then that I wasn't going to wait forever for her to realize her mistake. I had to accept that she was gone, at least physically, and that I needed to rebuild myself without her. That realization was both freeing and heartbreaking. I understood that I might never fully forget, that trust might be forever broken, but I could learn to move on. I started focusing on my work, my friends, and trying to rediscover who I was outside of that toxic relationship. I still felt the pain, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of empowerment. Betrayal had shown me who she really was, and in doing so, it forced me to confront my own strength. I knew I would survive this, even if it took a long time. I just had to keep going, one day at a time. Now looking back, I realize how much this whole experience changed me. I used to trust easily, believed in the best in people, but betrayal like this shakes you to your core. It's made me cautious, a lot more aware of the subtle signs I once ignored. But it's also taught me that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived the gut-wrenching heartbreak of discovering my wife was sleeping with some guy she called her mushroom forager, fooling me with her supposed nature lessons for months. I saw her lying, manipulating, and hiding in the woods while I was at home, clueless, feeling helpless. What I've learned is that betrayal doesn't mean the end of everything. It's a brutal lesson in trust, but it also forces you to confront your own resilience. I've come to understand that sometimes, loving someone means knowing when to let go. I had to accept that Lisa wasn't the person I thought she was, that her lies had destroyed what we had. Moving on wasn't easy, and I still feel the sting sometimes, but I know I won't let that pain define me. I've since started focusing on myself again, building a new life, one where I don't have to hide or look over my shoulder. I've learned to trust my instincts, to listen to that little voice inside that says, something off. And most importantly, I've learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply moving forward and proving to yourself that you're better off without the person who betrayed you. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone reading this who's going through something similar, it's this. Don't ignore the signs, trust your gut. And no matter how much it hurts, you'll survive. You'll come out stronger. I'm still healing, still trying to put the pieces back together, but I know one thing for sure. This experience has made me realize my own strength. I don't need someone who lies and cheats to feel whole. I just need to believe in myself again, and that's what I'm doing now.